Welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code, a podcast that ignites and celebrates your inner mothering essence, equipping you with the tools to live your dream life. I'm Dr. Gertrude Lyons, an author, coach, educator, and a blend of research, scholar, and mystical medicine woman. Join me in exploring holistic women's development, parenting, self-love, relationship fulfillment, and so much more. Let's delve into the depths of our inner mothers to reawaken our greatest selves and live our juiciest lives. In this podcast, we'll have conversations about mothering and motherhood that are real and raw and unlike any other. Through interviews with inspiring guests, live coaching sessions, and reflections on my own journey, Rewrite the Mother Code invites you to explore what it would feel like to stop living by limiting cultural and generational norms and start living and loving a more intentional life that you designed. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Rewrite the Mother Code with me, your host, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. Well, it's a beautiful morning here in Chicago, and I am so excited to have my internationally recognized Ayurvedic integrative medicine practitioner and certified yoga therapist, Dr. Avanti Kumar-Singh. She's also a very dear friend and someone who I hold in very high esteem, just personally and professionally. So Avanti Kumar-Singh, MD, is an internationally recognized Ayurvedic integrative medicine practitioner, certified yoga therapist, and a former ER doctor. Her approach brings together Western medicine with the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda from her South Asian heritage. Dr. Avanti is the former co-lead facilitator at Northwestern Medicine's Osher Center for Integrative Health. She hosts the Healing Catalyst podcast and offers a course on integrative medicine. She's a sought-after speaker and advisor in the wellness community, sharing her knowledge with Fortune 500 companies, top academic institutions, and leading industry and medical conferences. She's also been featured in notable outlets such as Huffington Post, Goop, Mind Body Green, and more. So I think today's episode, if I would have you considering, we're always expanding how we think, what we know about ourselves internally, externally. This is particularly about our health and well-being and expanding our awareness of what's possible as whether we're in a mode of healing our body or caring for our body. I know I have used and I've benefited tremendously from Avanti's work and bringing her principles, even it's a complex wisdom of Ayurveda, but she breaks it down and makes it so usable and doable. And I know you're going to feel the impact. So take it in, let it wash over you, pick up practices, pick up different ways of thinking about your body, your health. And here we go. Well, as promised, here I have with me Dr. Avanti Kumar-Singh. Welcome to the show, Avantis.
Thank you so much for having me, Gertrude. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I vaguely mentioned as I introduced you that you're also a dear friend, and I've always felt hugely supported by you and my work, and I love your work. And I mentioned, having even just what I've done with you has had an impact in my life. So thank you for all of that. So
Thank you for your kind
so
words. I appreciate
absolutely, absolutely, and I'm happy to share you with my audience.
that. Thank you for doing
I
that.
won't
I
keep you to
appreciate that.
myself.
I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. So excited to share with my audience you and your journey, which has led you now to write your second book, The Longevity Formula. So that we're going to be weaving that in for sure, because I want to hear, because it's not out yet. It's released in December. I've pre-ordered, of course.
Thank you.
So I'd love to hear your journey, leading you to this moment with this
Mhm.
book. But I know you have a beautiful whole life journey, and any of it that you want to share, I'd be happy to
Yeah, I don't really
be a
know what
part
to
of it.
start with. I mean, I can start with just a little bit about my background. I'm first
Mhm.
generation. My parents immigrated from India. So I grew up with Ayurveda in my daily life. It was just the way we lived. And so I went on to medical school, trained in medicine. I'm an ER doctor by training. And what I found was when I was in my training, I started to get really sick. I had been blessed up until that point with really, really good health. And somehow, when I got into my medical training, that kind of all started to spiral downwards, which,
Mm,
of course, with medical school, that can happen. But I think what I realized is that it wasn't anything that we could find on any tests or any labs or any imaging. I did all the standard things that I was learning about to see,
mm,
like, why are these things happening to me. And while there were some things that were a little off, it didn't explain the extent of the
mm,
headaches and the anxiety and depression and stomach aches and weight gain and pain and all of these things that were happening to me. There was something else going on. And I think that was
mm,
when I realized I was not living a lifestyle that I had learned since I was a child. Like, all of a sudden, everything that I had learned in Ayurveda, I wasn't practicing that anymore. And so I
mm,
started, reintroducing those practices into my life. And I slowly started to get better. And at some point, I just became so, um, there were two things: disenchanted with Western medicine a little bit, but
yeah.
also I think realizing that there was power in integrating both. And
Mm,
so that's why I sort of took a different path and went into Ayurveda. And so fast forward, 17 years later, I have been doing this for a long time where I have been teaching, writing, speaking about Ayurveda. And sort of one thing led to the next. I started because I wanted to just, start seeing patients. And the next thing I know, I'm teaching at Northwestern and, their medical program to the medical students. And the next person asked me to write, to do another lecture. And then I got asked, do you have this in a book? So I wrote in a book. I sort of just
mm,
took one step, after the other. And
yeah.
here I am 17 years later. And
Mm,
sort of what happened with this second book was that um, I was approached 3 years ago by my publisher, Sounds True, to write my second book, which is
mm.
really
I
exciting.
know, like in the
I
writing world, and it's like a dream, right? To have a publisher
Yeah,
approach you. So
I
I'm
I thought somebody
so
was
proud.
I thought somebody was punking me, honestly. I was like, "What?" I didn't think it was real. And we went back and forth, and one of the things I was really thinking about was longevity.
Mm,
Um, from the perspective of, I was about to turn 50 at that time, and I was thinking about, sort of what's my next era going to be? What is it that I want to do with this next period of time as I sort of stepped into what we call wisdomhood in Ayurveda, right? Those
mm.
years
Oh my God, I love
50,
that.
yeah, 50 and beyond. Like, what did I want that to look like? My kids had been successfully launched, out of the nest. And I was sort of like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I started thinking about my grandfather,
Mm,
my parents, my elders, and how they lived, and sort of just was reflecting on, they're all in their 80s and they are living these vibrant
mm,
lives, doing everything for themselves, living independently, have great memory and cognition. They're sharp. They're still involved in their families. And I was thinking, okay, this is such a different picture than what we see in
mm.
Western culture in the United States, for sure.
Yeah.
And that sort of became sort of the interest of, like, okay, let's really dig into this. Like, what is happening here? And that was sort of where the idea for writing a book on longevity from an
Mm,
Ayurvedic perspective was, to sort of bring together what we know in Western medicine as the mechanisms
mm,
of aging and all the longevity switches, as we call them.
mm.
But let's see, what does that mean in Ayurveda? And how do I bring them together? So I started doing the research of
Yeah.
proving everything we've done in Ayurveda from a Western standpoint. And sort of that's how this all happened. So
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you because,
Mhm,
well, one, I love always starting with the journey because it's there's so much we don't know about what's going to happen, down the line, right?
mhm,
And
yeah,
and we take one step at a time, and it leads us here, and it leads us
right.
there. And your first book, The Healing Catalyst, was right and needed to come out of you at that time, right?
Mhm, right.
Your third child, right? Now you're
Mhm.
expanding the family to four.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's something that was striking me about what you were saying. Um, Having been raised in a culture with Ayurveda, but then this is not what you said, but like, putting
Mhm,
it aside,
mhm,
you didn't
right.
like throw it away, but it's like,
Mhm,
oh, I'm in the US. I'm growing up here.
yep.
I'm studying Western medicine. Da, da, da.
Mhm,
Um, and in Rewrite the Mother Code, we're always kind of looking at like what codes, often we're looking at what are the codes we want to get rid of, like, that we're
mhm,
wired that don't actually
right.
support us,
Mhm,
and we need to weed those out. But I always say, there's codes in there that, and this is a real highlight of that things that were wired in that are actually have benefits and some real positive, things that
right.
we, for our reasons, all the same reasons, really, I guess, it's now I want to fit into a different culture, or,
Right.
whatever it is you can, I don't want to put
Mhm.
words in your mouth, but that's, what
Sure.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Um, and oh, but wait, those have actual real power. Like
Mhm.
let's let's bring those in. But then you had this advantage of kind of having both and a
Right.
perspective that, because I'm all about like a holistic approach, like
Mhm. Sure.
there's tons of things I don't like about Western medicine, but there's also things I value, but not
Right.
on its own.
Right.
It's just true. I don't think it's,
Yeah. No,
so
I
anyway, I
understand.
don't know if that resonates with you or what you're.
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't that I really, wanted to suppress it or get rid of it or throw it away. I think what actually happened for me is that I was in medical school and it's such an intense environment that it was so easy to fall out of those routines, fall out
Mm,
of those, ways of being and living that I had
mm.
followed. Honestly, I was able to follow them all through college and
Oh,
even
wow.
through graduate school before I
Yeah.
went to medical school.
Oh.
But somehow, with the intensity and probably family situation, I had just gotten married. I was, later on, a few years later, I had both my kids in medical school. So everything just progressively went down, spiraled downward and out of my life. So I think that that was part of it. And I would say I can admit very openly that I was also ingrained, I was sort of immersed in this Western medical world, learning that. And so it was sort of like,
Mm.
yes, let me put it to the side. And it was also convenient to not do it because I didn't have time. So it was
Yeah.
kind of a combination
Yeah,
of both, really.
for sure.
I don't know that I like, really meant to say, like
No, you weren't
consciously
like
was,
exactly.
yeah, it wasn't
Yep.
like I really wanted to rewrite those things, but I think I
Mhm.
was trying to sort of say, let's see what this other medicine is about, because that's what you're here to learn about. And let's
Yeah.
train in that. And the thing is that I, at some point, couldn't ignore the fact that every time I would learn something, I'd be like, oh, that's like Ayurveda. Like that's this, I started to make those connections. And it was when I started to have symptoms and get sick that I was really like,
Mm.
oh, I need to really go back to that and really figure out how I'm going to put those together with what I'm learning. So it
That's
was sort of a different
yeah. Yeah.
perspective for me.
No, it makes sense. Makes total sense. I love that. Well, we've been talking about Ayurveda. I don't know that I think probably most people have heard of it,
Yeah, sure.
heard the word, or maybe had,
Mhm.
a little taste of it here or there. Do you
Sure.
mind breaking it down
Yeah,
a little bit? Because you do that so well.
sure.
I already told people in the intro, like, she can break
Yeah.
it down. She breaks it down.
Oh,
It's very complex and,
yeah.
beautiful, deep wisdom, but there
Mhm.
are ways you can enter it that aren't overwhelming.
Sure. No, absolutely. I would love to. So, Ayurveda is the healing system of India, of South Asia. It is the oldest healing system that we know. It's over 5,000 years old and it has the roots of pretty much every other healing system within it. So we think of it as the mother of all healing. So
Mm,
traditional Chinese medicine comes from Ayurveda. Western medicine comes from Ayurveda. Many of the other ancient healing systems had their connections and roots in Ayurveda. And really, what Ayurveda comes down to is this idea, if I had to kind of boil it down to sort of one essence, it's that
mm,
when we live in harmony with nature, we will have optimal health and a vibrant life. And that
mm,
is because we and everything in the universe and nature are made of the same five elements: air, space, fire, water, and earth. And so the idea is that when you have harmony with those elements outside of you, you will also have harmony of those elements inside of you,
mm,
which leads to vibrant health and good health, right? And so that's really sort of the idea, is that, each of us is born with this genetic sort of nature, a blueprint, if you will say,
mm.
right, of these five elements, of different proportions of these elements, elements. I'm saying elephants, of these elements within us.
Maybe. Yeah.
um, and that determines sort of our predisposition to our behaviors, our
Mm,
mood, our reactions, our physical characteristics, emotional characteristics. Those are all the things that keep us in balance. Sort of that's our natural state of balance,
mm,
which can also then, because we know what our natural state of balance is, we can also figure out what is most likely going to happen when we go out of balance, right?
mm,
What are the symptoms that are going to show up? And because of that, Ayurveda is this very empowering healing system, because you actually, as an individual, can figure out a lot about how to keep yourself closer to your natural state of balance so that
mm.
you can have vibrant health. You don't need someone outside of you once you learn sort of the basic principles of Ayurveda.
Oh my gosh, Avanti, you just spoke blasphemy in the medical Western medical world.
Right,
I can discover things myself
right,
and be, my own healing agent. Oh, okay. I mean, that's
right.
really powerful and
Yeah. Yeah. And
so
I think
important
that
to know, right? It's just to know that. Yeah.
right. I mean, the basis of my work, and I think this is also why I wanted to go back to Ayurveda and sort of integrate the two, is because when I was in my training, I was seeing that my patients were giving away their power to someone else. They would
Mm,
come in and they wanted me to solve all the problems, right? And I would have to ask them lots of questions and really get in there. And I wanted to help people understand that there's so much power within them
mhm.
if they can tune into it, right? If they can tune
Yeah.
into the healer that's within. That's what I always say, is healing comes from within, because we actually know a lot of this stuff.
Mm,
I'm a guide, I'm a facilitator. That's what I think all of us are who are in the helping professions. We're
mm,
guides to help you on your journey. We're not doing it for you, right? We're advising you. Like, I'll give you an example, a very
great.
personal example from
Sure.
this past year, right? I mean, this.
Mhm,
I was on a breast cancer journey.
mhm,
So 4 months into writing this book, my body got a diagnosis of breast cancer. And I will tell you, I was really pissed off. I
mhm,
was like, I have no genetic factors. I have no family history. Where did this come from? I've spent my whole life helping other people, teaching people how to heal. And here I am. And I've been practicing all of this for
mm.
so long. Like,
What a
what?
blow, right?
Mm-hmm. And what I realized after a year of intensive treatment, and, I really did integrate the two.
Mm,
I went inward to say, okay, what do I need from others to guide me, and what am I going to choose, things that I know will help me? And that's where the integration came through,
mm,
right? So I did all of the conventional treatments. I had a regular oncologist, radiologist, hematologist, everything you can think of. And I also had an integrative oncologist who
mm,
was advising me on nutrition and supplements and integrative approaches. I had someone doing acupuncture. I had all my friends and colleagues in integrative medicine giving me a lot of wisdom, spiritual support, meditation, guided meditation. I mean, I was doing all of those things. And I think for me, after going through all of that treatment, I realized that Ayurveda is protective. And the reason I realized that is because I was able to get through all of my treatment from the day I was diagnosed with breast cancer to the day that I had my last radiation treatment was exactly 7 months. That, for to give everyone
Wow.
context who's
Yeah.
listening, that's a really, really short amount of time.
Yeah.
Because I had 8 intensive cycles of chemotherapy spaced 2 weeks apart. I had I had a bilateral mastectomy, and I had 15 radiation treatments in seven
In
months.
7 months.
Yeah, and actually
Wow.
probably really in 6 months, because the first 3, 4 weeks were just all the diagnosis, all the tests, getting ready for chemotherapy. And I say this not to sort of be like, oh, I'm so great. Yes, I speak the language. I was able to really sort of push for things. I called in some favors. I'm the first to admit that, so I could get
Mm.
through the system a little faster. And I had all of the
Mm.
complications. I was hospitalized for infections. I had, to have blood transfusions, fluids. I had nausea, vomiting from chemotherapy. I had all the things.
Sure.
But what happened for me between each treatment, each piece of treatment along the way, was that I was able to bounce back quicker than most people.
Mm.
Because, my healing team would not have allowed me to continue with treatment. They would have had to delay treatment if I could not handle it. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And I didn't have any treatment delays because I was able to handle it.
Mm.
And so what I realized is that Ayurveda is protective. I was so upset when I got this diagnosis.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize is that everything I had been doing was not just, like, oh, it didn't matter. It actually
No.
mattered so much. It had
Oh.
protected me through this process. And so I think that that is sort of what really came out in my book also, because I finished writing the book after.
After.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I realized that, Ayurveda, the practices we've been doing for 5,000 years, they protect you, because the truth is we live in a very toxic world.
Right. We can do everything. Nothing's going to
Exactly.
protect us at this point. Yep.
Exactly. It's not going to prevent us from
Prevent.
having
Yeah,
a
exactly.
chronic illness or a cancer diagnosis, right?
Yep.
But what it will do is it'll protect us so
Yes.
that when we do have some kind of a diagnosis, illness, symptom, whatever it is for you, you will bounce back faster. You will have more resilience. You'll be able to deal with it better.
Mm.
That is really what I came away from. That's a huge lesson for me after going through that process and, really sort of thinking about how does this fit into my life's work, my next era? And this
Yeah.
is what I realized.
So, you know, well, there's so much I want to say, Avanti, but thank you for
Yeah.
using your personal example. It's
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, but beautiful, and I hope this doesn't sound flippant, but like when you hear stories like that, it's like almost like, oh my God, what a gift the
Mm-hmm.
cancer was, even though like I so wouldn't want you or anyone or we don't
Right.
wish it on anyone, but it's just so amazing to me how often like, epiphanies like this. And
Mm-hmm.
I had the privilege of being on one of your I don't know, text chains,
Mm-hmm.
through some of
Yeah.
it. So I got little
Sure.
snippets, even though I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know everything. And there's
Right.
something from the start that really struck me. So one, having that, right? Like all these people,
Sure.
your family, friends, just, you know, go Avanti, like we're
Mm-hmm.
here. We love that. I think is really beautiful and important. Your community and drawing upon it in whatever big, small ways we can. But something you've always said, and I'd love to hear this because it really struck me and so important. Like my body was diagnosed with
Mm-hmm.
cancer.
Right.
And you say that very distinctly.
I do.
Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, I think it comes back to sort of, a lot of my spiritual beliefs, but also really understanding that I am so much more than my body,
Mhm.
right? That I am a soul within. This is the spiritual part of me that, honestly, I never really talked about in my work before this.
Mm.
And I leaned into it. I wrote about it in my book because I was
Oh,
like,
good.
this is so important for me. It has been, especially on this healing journey, right? And I was very careful about the words I use, even in that text chain, that family and friends text chain that had like 200 people or something in it. I would always use that wording of,
Yeah.
my body, because I really wanted to separate who I am at core, my soul, the I am within me,
Mm.
separate that from this body. This body is a container for me to do the work that I was put on this earth to do in this lifetime. I believe in reincarnation. So for me,
Yeah.
this is one of many lifetimes, and this is the work I'm supposed to do. So this body allows me to do that, to move through this material plane. It'd be kind of weird if my soul was just kind of doing stuff without a physical container. And so that's, it's really, really important to me to separate who I am at core from this body. I think that it allowed me to connect with everyone else who was sending me so much
Mm.
love, pouring love into me. It was the way that I could connect to the divine, to something greater than me, um,
Mhm.
that really was able to carry me through everything.
Mm.
um, because I really think that that connection is so important to healing. I think
Yeah.
actually,
Really
the way
underestimated, right?
yeah, and when I
Totally.
ended the book, I actually realized that's probably the most important thing in
Mm.
our healing, right? Is to be connected.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rewrite the Mother Code. If you're ready to go deeper on your journey of rewriting your mother code and self discovery, now is a great time to sign up for my newsletter. My free newsletter includes biweekly updates directly in your inbox. I cover everything from mothering and the divine feminine to embodiment and healing practices, plus exclusive content that I only share with our subscribers. As a little treat for those who join today, all new subscribers will receive my digital download of Summer Living, a guide to exploring your emotions about motherhood. It's a way of saying thank you for being here. Subscribing is quick and easy. Go to drgertrudelyons.com, enter your email, and you're all set. You'll automatically receive my gift in your inbox after subscribing. I'd love to have you in the Rewrite the Mother Code community to continue supporting you wherever you are on your path. Head over to drgertrudelyons.com now and join us. Now back to the episode. Mm.
That was a huge revelation for me.
Wow. Yeah, that's, I mean, well, so many things again. um, well, I'll go here first and then I may go to this other thing that I was thinking about. But
Mhm,
of course, in another context, I'm thinking about this through is birth, and I work with a lot of women who are in somewhere in, the continuum of deciding if they want to conceive a child,
mhm,
conception, fertility,
mhm,
pregnancy, birth, new motherhood. We haven't spoken specific. I know all the principles apply throughout it all, but
mhm,
when you said that about, how many all your patients that come to you just wanting the answers, just tell me what to do, just,
mhm,
um, and I know I felt hugely empowered by midwives who are like, well, we want to empower you. Like, you know what your
mhm.
body wants. Here,
Right.
I'll teach you some of what we know so you can even know some of that. And it was scary at first to like
Mhm.
own some of that power,
Sure.
because it's easier to put it out there. I
Mhm.
mean, easier we think, right? It's
Right.
it's
Mhm.
like, we'll give them the responsibility. Then something goes wrong, that wasn't my fault. I don't know. There's lots of reasons
Right.
I think that comes up. But I
Mhm.
think, and that's such a vulnerable area, because I don't consider birth a medical event, or an
Mhm.
emergency.
Right.
To me, it's a natural process, death, birth, you can go through it. So, um, this idea of owning our power in it and how Ayurveda fits in with that, I'd love to hear
Mhm.
your thoughts on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think, part of this is a balance, right?
Mhm.
Because like you said, owning your power can be very scary if you've never done that before.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually kind of the opposite. I had to actually release some control and allow other people to be my guides and my doctors, right? I really
Yeah.
had to do that, and trust in that. So that was an opposite issue for me.
Mhm.
um, but I think the point here is not to say that you're on your own. I think it's sort
Oh,
of
I'm sure. Yeah.
it's bringing people back to this idea that you do have power in this healing process, right? That
Mhm.
giving it to somebody else to solve your problems, looking outside of yourself. I think that that's something maybe, so pervasive in Western culture. We
Right.
just give our power away. We're looking for the answers outside of ourselves all the time,
Yep.
rather than going inward and sitting inside and sitting with ourselves to ask ourselves the questions, because it's hard. It's hard work, you
Mhm.
know? There were days when, I first got that diagnosis and I did not want to sit and like try and understand what was going on. I was like, screw that. Like I was mad,
Yes.
I was like, no, so it is harder to do this because
Mhm.
part of taking the power back means that you also have to be willing to ask some of those hard questions
Mm.
and then sit with the answers or sit with the uncertainty or um so I think that it's really a combination when you're
Mhm.
talking about any of these healing systems. I think what's so beautiful about most of these ancient healing systems, including Ayurveda, is that they're collaborative,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Western medicine is a very patriarchal sort of system.
Mhm.
And when we go through medical school, it doesn't matter if you're, if you identify as a woman or as a man, you are taught that you are all knowing.
Mhm. Yeah,
There is
it's a very
that
I
God.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
God complex that is put
Yeah.
upon you, right? I
Yep.
mean, I know that all of us felt like that. We're like, oh, we're supposed to have all the answers and know what to do. That's not the way it works. It's a
Mm.
very collaborative process. And so I think that if we could start to think about healing in whatever realm it's happening for us, whether it's in the
Mhm.
work that you're doing with your clients or it's the work I'm doing with my patients and students, it's about collaborating
You're right.
um, for healing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes, I always wanna kinda like jump up and yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause
Mhm.
as I've been writing my book, I've been going back and looking at my journey, through,
Mhm.
um, conceiving and fertility, and I think that was one of the key things that I tuned into was, like, no one was gonna have all the answers, as much as
Mhm.
it was new to me to kind of think, like, first of all, that I would actually have some of them. I
Right.
would actually be able to guide,
Mhm.
but, like, I may have been disappointed in or had different reactions to some of the practitioners that I saw, but collectively, they all had a piece of the wisdom, right? Like, they
Mhm.
all had
Right.
something that was important for me, and some of them even, when I was resentful and angry at my OBGYN for how she handled my early, like, conception
Mhm.
part,
Right.
like, that anger was important, right? Like, that was me finding my voice. That was
Mhm.
me connecting with, like, what I value and what's important to me, and
Mhm.
I that was very new for me, right? And I grew up in a very, like, Western medicine is God. My mom,
Mhm.
like, I think it
Sure.
was like church for her, right? To go
Mhm.
to see all the doctors and have them.
Right.
So for me to start thinking for myself and, like, so she gave a gift and I certainly was going to be very appreciative of Western medicine had I had complications that would have caused me to, really need the technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I valued that for knowing that it was there. Um, I just happen to have the belief that we overvalue that, right? Like the God
Right.
complex, and we've gone
Right.
down some routes that really aren't healthy for us. But
Mm-hmm.
that's its own thing, right? But there's one other thing I want to touch on. Um, well, there's a lot of things I want to touch on, but the one I'm going to at this moment is when you said at the beginning how Ayurveda is, you know, getting in tune with, in balance with our natural environment, right? Nature,
Mm-hmm.
the elements. Like I'm like
Mm-hmm. Right.
big fan of working with the elements, but
Mm-hmm.
um so I want to like dive into that a little bit
Sure.
more, right? And
Mm-hmm.
because there's kind of the elements, and depending on where, the seasons and cycles that we're all part of, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's you individually. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
name that because I remember when I did your course,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't remember how we identified which one I kind of had, how I was to work with my elements.
Sure.
Because then
Sure.
it gets personal, right? So there's the general
Mm-hmm.
and the personal. So we can
Mm-hmm.
all start with some of the general stuff of how to,
Yep.
touch some of this. So if you'd share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so where I'll take this probably right now is that, we all have all these five elements within us. And like
Mhm.
I said at the beginning, when we have our natural state of balance, each of us individually. And when we start to veer away from that natural state of balance, we start to have symptoms that can be very, very mild and, very, very subtle, or they can be very, very apparent and a lot, right?
Mhm.
And it's sort of like the further we get away from that natural state of balance here in the middle, the more we're going to have symptoms, right? And so the idea is to keep ourselves in balance. And how do you do that? Well, I mean, there's a lot of specific ways, like you said, we can for each individual, depending on, what your toxic load is and what your state of your digestive fire is, and all of these different things, right? That's a little bit more specific. But maybe what I could do is talk about sort of the five areas, sort of these longevity switches that
Yeah.
also happen to be the ways that you keep yourself in balance,
Great.
because these are things that we do on a daily basis in Ayurveda that I discovered were the longevity switches
Mm.
that really help us to live longer.
I
And
feel
that
like we're
is,
getting like some secret, like,
yeah, so
like,
the
really? We get
five,
to hear what they are?
yeah,
Okay.
the five areas are to remove toxins, to add prana, which is to add the life force energy. The third switch is to move that life force energy. The fourth is to sync with nature. And the fifth is to feed or nourish the system, mind,
Mm.
body, soul. We've touched on a couple of those things,
Yeah.
but those
Yeah.
are the five general areas of longevity switches. And so, in the book, I actually go deep into each of those longevity switches and the different practices that you can do
Great.
specifically within those switches that will help to switch those on. Okay.
Okay.
And they are all practices we've done in Ayurveda for 5,000 years. And I back it up with all the evidence, the science that we know from Western medicine that tells us why it works.
I know.
Because
I
the
love that.
Western mind always wants to know why,
Does
right?
it prove it? Yeah. But oh,
Exactly,
good. I
exactly.
can. We can
Yeah,
now
the
prove
joke I
Ayurveda.
have with my colleagues from Western medicine, when they're like, Avanti, what's the proof of that? I'm like, 5,000 years of data is not enough for you? And we'll just laugh. And they're like, okay, okay. I mean, because it's true. It's
Right.
5,000 years of data.
Yeah.
Um, and so let me do this. I'm just going to tell you maybe, how about if I share three sort
Love
of
it. That's what I
practices
was going to
that,
say. Can you give us one or two of an
yeah,
actual
that
practice?
everybody listening could
Perfect.
do right away, starting today, to help to switch those longevity switches on.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yes.
there's three that I would ask you to do. The first is to fast overnight. Okay. Basically, don't eat for 12 hours
Mm.
from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., whatever that is. Once you stop eating, you've had your last meal, no food, no drink. You can have water, you can have herbal tea, nothing consumed for 12 hours. And you want to make sure that you're not eating overnight. So follow the cycle of nature, right?
Mhm.
During the day when the sun is awake, you should be awake and you can eat. During the night when the sun is asleep, you should be asleep and you should not be eating. Simple, right?
Mm,
12 hours, no eating. Why is that important?
mm,
Because fasting, not eating, fasting is one of the strongest, most powerful activators of a process called autophagy.
mm,
Autophagy is the process in the body that gets rid of all the old junky cellular parts that we don't need and cleans them up and gets rid of them, right?
mm,
As we age, that process slows down. If we can fast every day overnight, we're every day, every evening, every morning, we're like switching that back on. We're kicking it up again. We're saying, no, run that process again, run that process, right? And that will activate longevity because what it does is it decreases the amount of cellular junk that's sitting in our tissues and
mhm,
it decreases that low level chronic inflammation that's caused by all that debris sitting around. So, what we're
mm.
doing is we're cleaning it up and decreasing inflammation, which leads to longevity, right? Inflammation we know
Beautiful.
is connected
So,
to every chronic illness that is associated with aging. So,
mhm,
fast overnight for 12 hours.
love it.
Once you get really good at the 12 hours, move to 14 hours or 16 hours. If you can kind of be in that range of 14 to 16 hours most days of the week, you are switching that longevity switch on because you're removing toxins and you're also syncing with nature.
Mhm.
Okay.
I've been doing that more readily, and I have to say, like, of anything that I've tried, even, like, if it's, first I was thinking about it from a weight loss perspective or this,
Mm-hmm.
but I just, just knowing in that intention that I'm doing something good for my body, like, I miss it. Like, I have crossed over to the point where it's like, oh, like,
Yeah.
it really makes a big difference.
It does. It does. It
Mhm.
makes a huge difference once you start it. And again, a lot of people in Western culture just want to like go to like, they're like, if a little is good, a lot must be great. So they'll try and do this one day, one meal a day type of thing. And it's hard to do that when you
Mhm.
haven't been doing it at all.
Yeah.
So start slowly. Just do the 12 hours overnight and
Mhm.
then move from there and you'll see the benefits, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing I
Okay,
would
good.
say. The
Yeah.
second thing I would ask everybody to do is when you wake up, first thing in the morning, get outside, get some natural sunlight into your eyes for
Mm,
at least 10 minutes before 10 a.m. every day.
mm.
All right. No
That's a new one
sunglasses.
for me. I have not okay,
Yeah.
okay, keep going because I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I thought you were gonna say
Not
something I'm
through
doing, and I'm not doing this, so
Yeah,
yay."
not through, a window, not through a
Okay,
car window, not through sunglasses. You want the sunlight to hit your retina. You're not looking at the sun, you're just in
mm,
natural sunlight. For 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes.
mm,
If you can do 20, that's even better. But 10 to 20 minutes outside before 10 a.m. If you can do it first thing when you wake up, that's even better. Okay.
okay.
Why is that? Because that is how we can sync with nature. That switches
Mhm,
on that longevity switch of syncing with nature.
mm,
That is important because you are resetting your circadian rhythm every single morning.
wow.
Why is the circadian rhythm important? Because it controls everything in our body. It controls every cell, every organ, every system in the body. And if you are not synced, if your circadian rhythm is not synced with the path of the sun through the sky,
Mm,
you will have symptoms. That is just an inevitable reality
mm,
because the syncing of your circadian rhythm starts with melatonin and cortisol, and those then have a downstream cascade of
mm,
affecting every other hormone, cellular process, system. And so if you have a mismatch of the cortisol and the melatonin, you're going to have problems. So
mm.
every morning you reset your circadian rhythm by getting that sunlight into your eyes. Your brain then says, "Oh, it's daytime. Release cortisol, decrease melatonin."
Oh,
So
wow.
that is super important. So that would be the second thing I'd ask everyone to do.
Absolutely, and I in my mind, I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? So when I'm in Mexico and it's warm when I wake up and I just
Mhm.
step out in the sun's, so
Right.
obviously right there. Now, do I have to have the sun in sight? Because where I am in Chicago,
Mhm.
I'm surrounded by houses and trees, like
Yeah,
I'm like, do I need to drive over to the lakefront and walk on the lakefront or
I no, I mean, the point is that you're getting outside and you're getting natural light
okay.
into your eyes, right? If
Okay.
it's sunnier, then, you probably need to stay outside for a little less time.
Mm,
You can stay, outside just for 10 minutes if it's bright and sunny. If it's a little overcast like it is in Chicago, try and stay out for 20 minutes. And, I
okay.
always say easy things, go outside and have your coffee in the morning, go for a walk, right? Then you're
Mhm.
getting a double whammy. You're adding prana, right? From the nature, from the trees and the sun and the air. You're adding prana into your system, which is another longevity switch,
Mhm.
and you're syncing with nature, right? You're
Yeah.
switching that longevity switch. So, and what you'll find when you read the book, and I'll just give this away, is
Yes.
that all the practices in the book switch on all longevity practices. Oh, sorry. All of the
Awesome.
longevity
Yeah.
practices in the book will switch on all of the longevity switches. And so you really
Awesome.
can't go wrong, right?
Right.
Right.
And I know new habits are, a thing to build. So you got to be
Mhm.
compassionate and gentle with yourself. And
Exactly.
a little bit goes a long way. But,
Mhm.
building a practice is what I know you're advocating for, right?
Yeah.
We know we're not going to be able to just, oh my God, I'm going to like do all five. I'm going to do all these things. We'll set ourselves up. But
Right.
like you said, just if you start with a little bit and move keep moving forward, the 12 hours, like, that's easy,
Right.
like, I can do
Mhm.
that because,
I'm
um,
sleeping.
I'm
Right.
sleeping, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I always say to everybody, a little goes a long way. This is not
Mhm,
about overhauling your whole life. That's another myth that we've bought into, that you somehow
mhm.
have to change everything for it to have any positive effects. That is just not true.
Yep.
And the second thing is, go for a quick win.
Yeah.
Don't make it difficult. Go for the thing that's going to
Right.
be easiest to do, because that is momentum that propels you forward to then say, I'm successful. Let me do the next thing. Right.
Mm,
So, of these three things that I'm sharing, pick the one that's easiest for you to do.
right.
Whatever that is, start with that one. Um, that's a quick win. Just go for a
Quick
quick
win.
win.
Exactly, and
Yeah,
celebrate it, and that gives you even
exactly.
more of it, right? Like,
Celebrate it.
more of that energy.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah, yeah.
the third practice I would suggest is to meditate and breathe. It's kind of a twofer. Okay. Why is that important? Because what we're doing is we're learning to shift ourselves into a parasympathetic response, a vagal response.
Mm,
We were not designed to be in a sympathetic stress response 24/7, 365 days of the year. We were not designed to do that, right?
mm,
That high school biology picture we all saw, to learn the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system in biology, right? Of
mhm.
the caveman running away from the tiger,
Right.
right? That was to indicate that our stress response goes on. The problem is that in modern life, we're running from a tiger 24/7,
Yeah. Yep.
right? And
Yep.
that causes inflammation, which then leads to chronic illness
Mm,
that decreases our longevity. And
mm,
so, if we can learn how to shift into parasympathetic by meditating, having a point of focus, it can be a candle, it can be a guided imagery, it can be a mantra, it can be your footsteps, it can be your breath. You want to bring your
mm.
mind to a point of focus. That's what meditation is. And then the second thing is to breathe, right? These are two things that are free and easy. You can do them anywhere. And, because most of us breathe up here in our head, we're just
Yeah.
breathing sort of like to the bottom of our neck, and that's it. We
Yep.
need to breathe into our bellies, right? Long, deep breaths. And we need to extend our exhale. Our
Mm,
exhale is calming. Make it longer than your inhale, and you will start to shift into that parasympathetic response. So,
mm.
those are my three practices I would ask everyone to do to switch those longevity switches on.
3 switches are going on.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I was also thinking like, okay, I could get up, go out and do a walking meditation first thing in the morning in the light. And I'm
Yeah.
doing 3 of them, like right there.
There you
More
go.
breathing. I'm not, trying to short circuit it, but at least, that's like a way
Yeah,
to start, right? It
exactly.
is not get
Exactly.
overwhelmed with like, oh my God, there's 3 different things I have to do. Like, well, there's ways to have them all
Just
work together.
Yeah, just combine them, link your practices to something you're already doing. I always say about
Mhm.
habit stacking, right? So if you make your coffee every morning, link that to going outside, stepping outside wherever you live, and
Yep.
maybe sitting outside on the stoop or on your patio and drinking your coffee. You're doing
Mhm.
two things at the same time.
Yeah, like that makes me think about that those if then statements that are supposed to help
Mhm.
trigger, if I have my coffee, then I will sit outside in the daylight,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So we can
Mhm.
bring all these things together. Well, I know we've been talking about what's in the book and, and all of that. So I'd love to my audience to know how to find you, how to
Yeah.
find your book, your courses, the work that you do, and you have a retreat that is now happening,
Yeah.
and that I'm very interested in. So tell us about those, how we find you.
Sure.
Then I have one last question.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find everything on my website, AvantiKumarSingh.com. You'll see my book pre-order there. You can also go to longevityformulabook.com. That'll lead you there as well. And I'm on Instagram, my full name, Avanti Kumar-Singh. I love, communicating with people. If you have
Mhm.
questions, DM me. I always respond.
Mm.
Those are probably the best places to look. You'll find all the things there. So
Well, and I'll also find on your website and all those things that you have a beautiful podcast
yes,
where you're,
yes.
sharing your wisdom and also talking to others in the field and, in this healing arena. But yes, definitely order your official launch of
The book comes
yeah,
out on December 17th, and it's
okay,
available for pre-order on all of the
all
major
the places. Yeah.
yeah, everything. All the major bookstores are carrying it, so you can pre-order
Yeah.
any of those places.
Well,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. I'm so happy that more and more people are going to have access to this since they can't maybe necessarily have you personally, will find you personally through your book, your podcast, and
Mm,
the other ways that you share. So, my last question that I ask all my guests at the
mhm,
close of the show is what does rewrite the mother code mean to you?
mm. I think for me, rewrite the mother code is quite literal because Ayurveda is the mother of all healing,
Mm,
and I grew up with this medicine. And so for me, rewriting the mother code has been to really bring together the medicine that I grew up with, which is
mm,
Ayurveda, and the medicine that I trained in, which is Western
mm,
medicine, and how to sort of rewrite the code of how those integrate together and how that
mhm,
can really empower people to really take their healing back into their own hands.
mm. Yay, beautiful. Oh, I love asking that question because I get such beautiful responses that are personal, but cover the whole
Yeah.
broad spectrum and meaning of it. So thank you
Mhm.
for that. Thank you for the gift of
Welcome.
everything that you're sharing and of
Oh, my
yourself and
pleasure.
personally, professionally, that we, can all heal, live vibrant, beautiful lives with. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Gertrude.
You're welcome. Ah, what a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful time with Avanti. And I hope you felt the same and drew, I just love how everything integrates everything, when we're looking at things holistically, when we're looking at ancient practices, when we're looking at reconnecting, with the elements, with nature, trusting ourselves, trusting our intuitive selves. The signals from our body and listening. I think so much about this is about listening, listening both to external experts, resources, digesting them, and really taking the nutrients that we need. Because as individuals, it's different for everybody. There's no one formula that we have for our health, for our emotions or spiritual connection, right? It's very individual. Take what works, and what resonates, what feels like it is going to be the thing supporting. Because I've been to holistic practitioners where some surprising things that I would have thought like, oh, that's not good for me. Or I'm thinking back to nursing my daughter and the suggestion to supplement with half and half, to that, like, when again, I'm like, first of all, dairy, no, like cow dairy, no, um, and just supplementing in general. But for a short period of time, it's what kickstarted the process and it worked, right? So I trusted and followed that because, when I looked at other possibilities, this felt like it was what was in tune for all of us. So that's where things, that you come up with or others really give them, the the listening that they need, and not just take everything for granted or assume that anyone, just because they've studied it or it's their thing, that they know what's best for you, because you know what's best for you. And even the work I do when I'm coaching, supporting, I'm always happiest when, um and I'll often ask, like, what do you think? What's your system telling you? And then even if I offer, support or guidance, like, how does that sit with you? How does that resonate? And saw that with Avanti. It was like, oh, here's how I was hearing it. And she's like, well, actually, it was like this for me. It's like, okay, cool. Like, now I hear you and, what your story is and what's going on with you. So that's what I'll leave you with this time and during our time today. And I'm so excited to uh, support Avanti. She's, like I said, been a huge support in me and my work. And I just love when we can give and receive and share and support. So blessings on your day and blessings on your listening. Thank you for being with me on this episode of Rewrite the Mother Code. Dive in even deeper into the content by visiting drgertrudelyons.com. And that's DrGertrudelyons.com, where you'll find comprehensive show notes, blog posts, and ways to work with me. If this episode resonated with you and you believe in the significance of this transformative work, take action now. Hit that subscribe button and share this episode with a friend who could benefit from some mother healing. Your support means the world to me, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts. Leave a review today. Every word fuels the strength of Rewrite the Mother Code. I personally read and respond to each review, so your feedback is invaluable in shaping the future of the show. Together, let's empower our communities and create lasting change. Until we meet again, know that I'm cheering you on every step of the way.